At Capella University, learning the right skills could make a difference. That's why our business programs teach you relevant skills you can take from the course room to the workplace. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Life can throw a lot your way in the morning. You might be battling drop-off times, while your kids are battling imaginary monsters or their shoelaces. But no matter what life brings, Life cereal puts a smile on everyone's face. With 24 grams of whole grains and unexpected sweetness in every serving, it's sure to please even the pickiest eaters. Help start your mornings with Life cereal.
I really love my life.
This one was really personal to me because I feel like I was betrayed. So we've done podcasts before about self-publishing, in particular about what I thought was a genius business model started by Tucker Max, and then the CEO was JT McCormick. JT was like, had this incredible story. He was the son of a pimp. He rose up to be a great CEO. He was like CEO of the year. He was winning awards, and he was the CEO of Scribe Media. Tucker brought him in, and I did at least 2 podcasts with him. I really liked him, but you just never know about people sometimes. And look, who knows what the final record of this will say, but basically Scribe Media went totally bankrupt. Tons of books are published there. Like David Goggins' books are published there. I've had many friends who've had books published there. I can't even list all the books that I know. But if you look up Scribe Media, you'll know half the authors. They're all huge, big authors. And it was kind of like this cross between self-publishing and publishing. It was, a really great idea started by Tucker. And then after a few years, Tucker, and look, I worked hard with Tucker on it. Like we would do podcasts about it. And we were, my book was essentially, Choose Yourself was the first book published, not under Scribe Media, but under that model of like professional self-publishing. And then JT just sort of, I don't know, he disappeared. And, I guess there's going to be court cases about it. And there's a lot of things where I should use the word alleged about it. And everybody thought Scribe was gone. But then Eric Jorgenson, who I had never met, but we knew each other roughly. Eric Jorgenson took over the company. He bought the assets. There was basically almost nothing to buy, but he bought the assets, rehired as many people as he could, saved as many clients from leaving as he could. And now guess what? He is running a successful self-publishing let's call it professional self-publishing company, Scribe Media. This is his company now. And it's really fascinating to see a good brand and a good idea survive the worst. And Eric talks about how he did it, why he did it. But also, again, Eric and I talk about the importance of self-publishing. I understand why people go to the Simon & Schusters of the world. Heck, about half of my last book, Skip the Line, was done by HarperCollins. So there's reasons why you go to publishers. For one thing, they're probably not going to disappear overnight like at one point Scribe Media did. I don't think Scribe Media will do that again now that Eric is at the helm. But it was a real lesson for me that no matter how much, in my 30, I guess I started being in business in 1995, so almost 30 years ago. And in my 30 years of business, I have met a lot of criminals. Heck, I was offered a job by Bernie Madoff. I've met a lot of criminals. And I've met a lot of people who committed fraud. I'm not saying that's what was done here. Again, I'm using the word alleged. And there's no real common pattern. It is really, I remember with Bernie Madoff, I was going to meet him, and all these hedge fund managers were calling me and saying, "Oh, do you think you could put in a good word for us with Bernie? We want to invest in Bernie Madoff, but he doesn't really let in new investors." And then after Bernie Madoff was exposed as a total fraud and Ponzi scheme, all these same friends of mine, professional hedge fund managers, the best in the business, all of them said, "No, I never called you about that. We knew from the beginning that Bernie was a fraud." And I said, no, you called me while I was on the steps of his building about to walk in and see him. Don't you remember that? And they're like, no, that's impossible. And I even checked my phone records, and sure enough, they all called me like that minute right before I was visiting Bernie. All this to say, I'm not saying JT is Bernie Madoff. I'm just saying it's hard to know. And I mean, Tucker Max was fooled, and Tucker is one of the smartest people on the planet that I know. All the clients were fooled. And again, allegedly fooled, whatever the term is. But I'm really impressed that Eric went in there and did a good thing, and he's going to make a lot of money because he took, and this is an example, like often the best opportunities are found in the ashes of destroyed once good ideas. And by the way, I still highly recommend Scribe Media and the concept of professional self-publishing because, again, as I was about to say, I've done both. My best-selling book ever was Choose Yourself. I sold well over 1 million copies, and that was essentially self-published. Although, like I said, I professionally self-published it, which you'll hear me and Eric talk about what that means. And I think it's just a better approach. If you're going to write a book, first off, book publishers, unless you're already have millions of followers on social media, you're not really going to get a big advance. You're going to have to wait 1.5 years for your book to get published after the deal is signed. Even if you are getting an advance, the deal is structured over years and years, and it doesn't really amount to that much. Even a big advance doesn't amount to that much at any one given time. And I think you could you're not in control of the marketing, you're not in control of the design, you're not in control of anything. So I prefer to be in control of my artistic product, and artistic sounds a little pretentious. I prefer to be in control of my product, and in particular in control of design, editing, marketing, when the book comes out. I mean, I remember one time I had this was back when I was writing finance books in 2008. I had a book, was a good book called The Forever Portfolio, and it was scheduled to come out December 2008. They had scheduled it 1.5 years in advance. I made the deal in August 2007. It came out in December of 2008. It was Random House or Portfolio Penguin, one of those. And I said to the publisher, hey, we're going through the worst period for stocks since 1929. Maybe this is not the right month to publish the book. And he's like, we have to do it. It's in the schedule. And of course, that book sold only 300 copies. I mean, there's more reviews on that book than copies sold, which is hard to believe. So, I don't even understand how that happens. So it's better if you're going to work really hard on something, and a book, if it's good, is something you really pour your life into. And I encourage everybody to write a book, tell your story, let your great grandkids who will never know you, let them know your story. Or if you love writing, write a book. Or if you are in line for consulting gigs or speaking gigs, it's good to have a book. A book is like your business card almost. And I know not everyone agrees with that, but consider it. But anyway, let's get down to the story. What happened? Why did it happen? How was it saved? What's going on? Eric Jorgenson has really done a great job. He's taken over Scribe Media. I'll let him tell the rest of the story.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
This group took over, and I wanted to hear what was going on. And so, you came on. And so what is going on? How did you get involved in Scribe?
Yeah, I mean, probably like so many other people, I got pulled in by Tucker. We'd been sort of internet friends for a really long time. I'd been reading his blog forever. I loved what he did. And one day I had been working on a book for a few years, and I just tweeted, I think I've got a manuscript done. And Tucker reached out and was like, I know what to do with manuscripts, man. Let's talk about it. So he gave me the whole lay of the land of publishing and helped me understand all of what my options were. And I ended up publishing my first book with Scribe in 2020. And I had an incredible experience, and I loved the team, and I loved what they do. And I think what they do is the future of publishing. So I've been a fan of the company ever since. I've been evangelizing it. I immediately started working on my second book. And was publishing a second one with them in 2023 when chaos struck.
Well, what was the title of the first book?
The first book is called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, great book. I have it.
Thank you.
I have it right on my bookshelf somewhere here. Yeah, right there.
Amazing. Thank you.
And Naval's been on this podcast. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, he's incredible. I've learned so much from him. And that book was just an output of like following him for 10 years and learning so much from him and wanting to, share that with the world.
And that book was a best-selling book. So like, through Scribe, I think it's really important to know that, and look, I've talked about this a ton on the podcast, but the publishing world has changed, and someone like Tucker was really at the forefront and at the center of that change, where he really knew how to kind of morph the best of two worlds, which is the mainstream world of publishing, which had its flaws but still had some benefits, and the kind of wild west of self-publishing, which also had its flaws but had incredible benefits. And Scribe, which Tucker created, really merged those elements. And your book is a great example where it was like a massive bestseller.
Yeah, it's like, I give Tucker a lot of credit for this because he recognized this like 10 years ago. And he was so early to shaping this and helping to normalize, not just hybrid publishing, but true professional high-end self-publishing, which is really what Scribe does. And we're seeing more and more people do it, right? Like most famously Goggins, who published with Scribe and has done like 5 million copies plus. But my book also, I mean, we're probably close to 1.5 million copies sold.
That's great.
We're just self-published. Like it is a changing world. And you see more and more of that. Alex Hormozy did the same thing, right? There's all kinds of people kind of move in this direction.
Yeah. So then one day you get the call where it was such a surprise. Like I could not believe it that you basically got the call and I didn't even have a book going with them. You had a book going with them and they were just out of business. What happened?
I just started hearing rumors swirling online, right? Like the first thing I saw was like somebody forwarded me an email newsletter that said Scribe shut down. And I was like, no way. Like that's impossible. I was literally in the office like a month ago visiting them. I have ongoing work with them. I've been working with them for months. Like there's no way they're shut down. I would know. And so I had Javon's phone number. So I picked up the phone and called Javon. I was like, what is going on? Like, he's like, oh, seeking investment, seeking new ownership, trying to figure out how to like keep it all going. But they had laid off a bunch of people at once because they were short on money. And he had like not told anybody that. So they laid off a ton of people. And that's what really like, that was the domino that knocked everything else over. The bank showed up and said like, they just claimed the assets because there was a bank loan out to the company and they were the senior creditor. So essentially the bank claimed the company, took the whole thing through bankruptcy because the company had no cash and Javon hadn't told anybody that there was no cash until the very last minute. And so all these employees are left without severance and authors were left having prepaid for work they didn't get.
Wasn't there a CFO or wasn't there any other controls other than Javon on the company?
There was no CFO. Though apparently many people had told him that he needed to hire one. The biggest issue I think was like these are all like alleged things that are from his investors lawsuit, but like he was fabricating financials and sending them to the investors. Like there's this, you see the allegations at least in public documents from the lawsuit. Like who knows, like the court case is not done yet. We don't know what like the jury will find in a full investigation, but like it is clear now, at least the consensus of information seems to be that like he was hiding the financial state of the company and just doing absolutely anything he could to like prop up the appearance of himself and Scribe, even though the way that he was running it made it lose money, even though, for the first 8 years, it had been a growing profitable company.
Yeah. So, I mean, like clearly his bread was best buttered in just simply growing a business and selling it for hundreds of millions of dollars, which was the path Scribe was on. Like it was clearly on that path. I mean, even probably up to the last minute, like assuming the financials were correct, which they weren't, Scribe was on path to be sold anywhere between $50 and $100 million. Like that's what it seemed like it was worth at the time. So like why, for instance, expand the office space when you don't have the money for it? Or why, I don't know, why run the company into the ground, and then also allegedly, again, I say allegedly, we don't know anything that happened, but did he take money from the company that was inappropriate, or like what was going on? And by the way, I'm saying this as someone who really liked him. It was really a disturbing thing. You kind of realize as you get older that some people are disturbing.
Yeah. And even like, I think Tucker wrote an incredible post about this,
yes.
Like a very comprehensive thing that actually dives into the psychology and the experience that Javon had growing up, because it's a very unique experience, and the position that he was left in at Scribe, which is a very unique position. And this does not absolve him of anything, but like certainly the inner demon won this round, and it was a very important round, and it affected hundreds, thousands of people with a lot of money on the line. I think the way Tucker frames it is like he had an addiction to the appearance of being a successful CEO. And so it did not matter whether the company made or lost money to him. What was actually the most important piece in his mind was like telling people that he built out a big office space, or telling people that he was hiring people, or winning awards. And it was just fundamentally the wrong way to run a company for growth, the wrong way to run a company for longevity, the wrong way to run a company with a customer-centric focus, which is all the things that I think Tucker and Zach did that made Scribe great in the first place. So I think it was just, people really underestimated how different the decision-making would be when Tucker and Zach stepped back, which they did at the end of 2021. So there's really like an 18-month period where Javon was running the company, roughly on his own, and left in a position where he could sort of create his own reality.
Take a quick break. If you like this episode, I'd really, really appreciate it. It would mean so much to me. Please share it with your friends and subscribe to the podcast. Email me at altucher@gmail.com and tell me why you subscribed. Thanks.
Is it time to reimagine your future? The right business skills may make a difference in your career. At Capella University, we offer a relevant education that's designed to focus on what you need to know in the business world. We'll teach professional skills to help you pursue your goals, like business management, strategic planning, and effective communication. And you can apply these skills right away. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
What do you think Tucker and Zach might have learned from this? Even like mundane stuff like, okay, keep better track of the sea. I don't know what you learned from something like this, really. Like, what do you think they learned from this?
I'm speculating at least on the lessons learned, because, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but certainly like, the things that jump out to me are definitely be careful who you sell your company to, right? Like those guys were trusting Javon to run a company that still owed them a bunch of money, like during the rest of the transaction.
But that is a normal thing though. Like,
Sure.
For many founders, you're a CEO, and then eventually you hire a CEO who's better than you. There's professional CEOs out there, and you can't be expected to lord over day-to-day affairs or micromanage or check the books. Like,
yeah,
they didn't really sell the company to Javon. Like they were the founders and largest shareholders in the company that they let Javon run. That's like a normal process.
Well, they did sell. They both were in the process of selling their shares, and Javon had brought on his own investors, I believe.
Right. So they were in the process, but they did not sell all of them.
I believe they did. They were just, the payouts were still coming. I could be wrong. I haven't seen any of the documents. I don't know the paperwork.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
I mean, the financial infrastructure definitely wasn't there, right? Like you said, there was no CFO. Like it was being manipulated. It wasn't being checking by a third party. So maybe that's something to consider. The other, and maybe the biggest overarching thing is just like the old sort of adage, you can't do a good deal with a bad person. And I think Tucker does an incredible job in that post of, recognizing and admitting that there were red flags that he just didn't take seriously enough. And, when this all happened, he was gutted, but he also was kind of like, man, like he told us who he was and we didn't believe him. We still let him in the tent.
I guess that's the main thing, is that if someone tells you who they are, you got to believe them. Like, I know lots of CEOs, and I'm sure you do as well, in hundreds and hundreds of businesses. And some CEOs are so rock solid, which Javon seemed, but you kind of have to they have to be rock solid in every possible way, unfortunately, or else you just can't know. I mean, no matter what, you can't know, but you have to make a best guess at some point, and you got to use all the knowledge at your disposal, which, everybody missed it here.
I mean, by all accounts, like, he was good at so much of the job, right? Like,
yeah.
Tucker and Zach, said he was incredible about creating a service orientation in the company. He was a great manager. People loved him. He was, a good leader. He was so charismatic, and told the story of Scribe incredibly well, and did, helped build that company up. But it's, going back to the classic Buffett thing of, like, if you don't have the integrity, the rest of it doesn't. You have an intelligent, hardworking crook. The test of character that comes around when it really matters, and who passes it and who fails it. The leadership of the company and the character of that leader, especially when they're left in a place where you don't have all the normal checks and balances, that a more mature company might have, is everything. And that was just like the drain plug that got pulled.
So you get the call and you realize not only is your book in trouble that you have under, Scribe was helping you publish another book, and you'd already spent for that. And it's not cheap. Like, if you're doing a full force, book that you want to appear in bookstores and have marketing and look great and be edited great and have a team around it, I don't know what the price is that you paid, but it's like $10,000 or more. It's not insignificant. And you get this call, but you also get a call that the company is gone. It's disappeared. And now you're running the company. So what happened in between then and now?
Yeah. It was a wild summer. I mean, pretty over the course of, 60, 90 days, basically, I went from, I lost, as you say, like 5 figures personally in that bankruptcy, just for services that I paid for that, I wasn't going to get. And that happened to hundreds of other authors. And it's a really, like, gut wrenching thing.
And where'd that money go? Like, was there just, like, not enough business? Because clearly you were paying for service. Here's the strange thing. A service business is so easy to run for P&L because it's not like a product business. There's inventory and there's manufacturing. And so there's a lot of upfront fixed costs that you have to handle. But, like, I've run a service business. When you don't have the customers, you let go of people, and people understand that in a service business. It's not, their job only depends on if there's business in there. So how do you go that quickly? Again, we don't have to go into how it went out of business, but, like, the money has to go somewhere in a service business because you're paying for services.
Yeah. Oh, I think there's a few things. I mean, like, one, like you mentioned, that huge office build out didn't need to happen. Mm-hmm. It was like, Frank, I think some might have been, like, quote unquote stolen, like, unreasonably distributed. But I think the vast majority, frankly, was just wasted. I think there was a ton of people hired. Promises were made about nobody losing their jobs. The office was expanding. They were just really investing every dollar that came in as quick as they could in growth or payroll or anything like that. But you're making these long-term commitments to service authors' books. And so they didn't have the float that they needed to make good on all these promises. And, the truth of the situation was hidden until the very last minute. I think there was just a lot of, like, oh, we just need to bring in, like, just got to cover payroll for a little while, months maybe. And then all of a sudden, like, you just hit a brick wall and it's game over and nobody saw it coming. Everybody's left empty-handed.
And so, okay, so sorry, I keep interrupting your story. I want to know how you then stepped up and took things over.
Yeah, I mean, this really just started as, I'm an author. I'm a huge fan of the company. I believe Scribe's model is the future of publishing, and I didn't want to let this thing go. Like, I think that Scribe has created a lot of good. It's how I publish my books. Like, I don't want to have to go start over with a new publisher. I don't want to have to give up, 30, 50, or 90% of my royalties to another publishing company. I want to keep publishing with Scribe. The model that Scribe does, I want to pay experts, and I want to own 100% of my creative control and my royalties. Like, that's how I came into this author world. That's how I want to go out. I'm a zealot about that. And so I tried to save the company. And I come over the years to have friends who buy companies. So I started making phone calls, and I just started talking to people about like, what would it take to save this company? Can you buy it as is? Is there a way, like, what will happen?
Like, who are you talking to? Like, who was there left to talk to?
At the company, like the bank's lawyers came in like right away. So I was not doing so much like on the Scribe side of thing. Once I understood that like the company was in trouble, it was going down, I just started calling people on the basically like permanent equity, private equity, holding companies, like people who do that for a living, who buy companies for a living, whether they're distressed or not, and just try to understand what the options were, and so after, a whole handful of conversations, I had a great conversation with these guys, Sieva and Xavier from Enduring Ventures. They have a long-term holding company. They have a background in publishing. They have a background in in buying distressed businesses. And so
what else have they bought in the past?
They bought, probably the most famous thing they bought is Up Counsel. If you remember that startup, that like VC-backed legal startup.
Vaguely.
They've got a whole bunch of like kind of like quote unquote boring cash flow businesses, telecom. They own a big pool building business in Phoenix, like some hilarious things like a motorcycle rental business in Hawaii. Like it is a long-term holdco hodgepodge. But I like their ethos, which is like we buy companies to be high quality companies and run them for the long term and just keep investing and compounding. Like I like that attitude. I'd met them a few times. I've been following them for years. And
how'd you meet them? Like, how did you come to know them in your circle of business?
I met them either for the first time, either at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting or at Capital Camp. This is a great investor event in Missouri.
Like, what were you doing at this time? Like, were you basically considered yourself a writer at this moment? And $1.5 million copies is good, so you were making money there. Like, what is that? What you were doing?
Yeah, I had a beautiful empty calendar. I had like one standing meeting a week. That was it. Like I was just writing, and I was doing some like deep tech venture capital investing. So I still have a small VC fund as well. But it was a great, it was a good life, and I just kind of felt like called to dive into this. I truly had no idea where this was going to end up. I thought I would spend 90 days trying to help this company, get them back on their feet, find the right team to bring them through this. And I'd get to go back to writing books. And very much to my surprise, after they'd, bought the logo and the brand and the website from the bank out of the bankruptcy, and they hired over some of the team, they called me and said, like, we need a CEO to run this thing, and we think it should be you. It's like,
so they then contacted, or you introduced them to the bank, the main people that were owed money, I guess. And what were the assets of the company? So you mentioned a website and a logo and a brand. Did they have client contracts that needed, obviously there were client contracts that need to be fulfilled, but what is the benefit of taking over all these contracts where you're not getting any more money and you just have to fill the services? Obviously there's good benefit, but what was the benefit to investors?
Yeah, I mean, there ended up being like I don't want to overstate my like intelligence on this one because I was not close to the deal. I wasn't involved in the deal really at all. Like I was a bookend on one side of being like, hey guys, go take a look at this. And then like they went to Austin, they met with the bank, they met with the team, they did all of that stuff. And then like 2 months later, after that was all sort of done, called me and said like, okay, now we need somebody to come in and be CEO. So like, I'm not a deal guy. I don't understand how all of the like assets got sorted in different directions. I do know that like the old Scribe Media LLC was like completely and irreparably bankrupt. And so what happened is like a new company was formed, literally just bought, I think, the brand and the website, and then hired over some of the team, hired me, and carried forward. There was just like no possibility of carrying on that previous company, as far as I understand.
And during those 2 months, I mean, there are other companies out there trying to get it. Like there's, I think it's selfpublishing.com, Chandler Bolt. There's a lot of decent companies in that, Scribe is sort of the grandfather of that industry. And I say grandfather, it's a 10-year-old industry tops, but there were other companies that were quickly trying to I don't want to say poach because there were no client. I mean, there was no Scribe left to poach from, but they were scooping up Scribe's clients pretty quickly. 2 months is a long time. Like, okay, so what? You had the brand and the website. What, and you had some of the people. What good did that bring anybody?
Yeah, it was a chaotic time. There's also like people from the Scribe team that are leaving and setting up their own shop. And there was a bunch of like, it's hard to know what was what. There were a lot of like opportunists, I think, that like showed up and posted half truths or non-truths to their own benefit. But ultimately, like you said, you know, Scribe is the godfather of this space. It's one of the pioneers of it. And for all of the chaos of last summer that affected, you know, hundreds of people, there are thousands of people who had an incredible experience with Scribe over that whole decade, and tens of thousands more who are aware of Scribe and the brand and what it does. So I think there's a ton of good. I mean, you know, somebody else might have come into this and just said like, nope, too messy, not dealing with it. Like, we're just going to start a new company, start a new brand. But I don't think that's the right approach. And I don't think it's like the honest approach. I don't think it's the right thing for the brand. I don't think it's the right thing for the customers. And by doing this, we were able to, you know, we can't fix every problem, but we've been really working hard to bridge that gap with customers who did get caught and really took a loss in that last bankruptcy. We've hired a number of the team members back who had been let go during that bankruptcy.
So these guys, the investors, Enduring Ventures, they're the firm, they bought from the bank kind of these basic assets like the brand and so on, and then they infuse some capital in so you can rehire some of the old people. And what did you start when you day one as CEO? What did you start doing?
I started talking to customers. I met everybody on the team, and I started talking to customers, and I started understanding, you know, what worked and why, and who went through this tough position, and how can we, you know, restart the presses, basically, build this business back to, you know, like there's a whole host of things that it did really, really well in 2019 and 2020, and the whole order of business is just like get back to doing what Scribe does best, be flawless on the fundamentals, be service providers, do away with all the chaos of the last, you know, 18 months, which just takes a lot of untangling and we're essentially rebuilding a company from scratch. So there's a lot of systems work to do. There's a lot of communications to do for sure, reaching out to the community and trying to tell them the story of, you know, here's what happened.
Like, what are some case studies of people you called and what happened with them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole gamut, right? Like, there's a lot of people who are instantly understanding. They're like, shit happens. I understand you didn't control it. I understand you didn't cause it. You know, let's put the past behind us. What can you do? How can we move forward? There's some people who really just paint you with the same brush until you work through things. And there's some people that frankly will never be able to forgive the wound that they, you know, received at the, you know, from like that logo, from the Scribe logo. And, you know, try as we might, we can't, you know, necessarily reach everybody, but I tried. I sit down, I have hour conversations one-on-one with everybody from this community that will take the time to do it and explain as best I can and show them kind of where we're headed.
Is it time to reimagine your future? The right business skills may make a difference in your career. At Capella University, we offer a relevant education that's designed to focus on what you need to know in the business world. We'll teach professional skills to help you pursue your goals, like business management, strategic planning, and effective communication. And you can apply these skills right away. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
So let's say there was an author who was like 1/3 of the way done with their book, and they had spent all the money, and you wanted to get them back. Like, would they pay up, or would you finish the book? Or even though you weren't the same company anymore, you were just the same logo, what would you do? What were some strategies that you did to kind of get customers and then keep customers?
Yeah. So in that case, 1/3 of the way through, what we decided is the policy here is like, we cannot possibly work for free. like there's too many authors who lost too much money for us as a brand new company starting over to be able to make good on all of those promises. But what we can do is essentially work at cost for all of those authors who got stuck in that bankruptcy. So we have been, with this author, we figure out exactly where they left off. We figure out exactly what hard costs are left, what exactly the overhead is necessary to like get the rest of their book done. And we give them a very clear price. So people do end up having to pay a little more than the money that they had spent with the old company that was lost for us to finish their book, but they get a top-notch team, in some cases the same people, and being able to finish what they started for the best price they can possibly get for the quality.
How many of the old staff were you able to hire back? Because obviously, if the same team is calling me as an author, I'm much more likely to say, yeah, let's just finish what we started.
Yeah, I think the company is about 27 right now, and 20 of those I would say came from the Scribe, from the original Scribe before that. And some of these are the most veteran Scribe team members. I mean, our executive editor was literally the first employee that worked with Tucker and Zach getting the company started. Mark Chait.
Okay.
I mean, our head of production is doing, like, he's been with us since before Tucker even started Book in a Box, like more than 10 years ago. He worked with Tucker as an independent author, and just quite a few of the most tenured team. And then
how many of the old clients were you able to keep? Or let's say, how many of the people who were mid-book were you able to keep? What percentage?
Probably 150 have come over now, which is
great.
Like, yeah.
Wow. So, and then, like, again, what sort of decisions did you do to kind of get things upright? Like, it's like a big statue that fallen, and it's very heavy, and you have to like drag it upright. Like, how did you get an office space? Is everybody working from home? Like, just managerially, what did you do?
Yeah, it's a pretty remote company at this point. So we've got a small like co-working space, but like it's 90% remote. I think simplicity and speed, and just I repeat it here because I repeat it at the at the company, like being flawless on the fundamentals. Like, we're rebuilding a reputation. We have to get close to a zero tolerance, like mistakes, or even zero tolerance, like feeling of not being closely held and well guided through this process. Scribe has always given away all of our knowledge for free. It's all on the blog. It's all in the Scribe method. Like, if you want to go self-publish yourself, do it yourself. But if you want to hire experts to do it, if you want to be guided through the process, then come to us. And so it's very much a service organization. We wanted to get all of our ducks in a row so that we're not missing deadlines. We're not shipping mistakes. We are nailing the basics. And so stripped away a lot of the complexity that had emerged over like a company growing, and just simplified the services, dialed in the pricing a little bit. There had been some kind of wonky decisions made over the past year about pricing. So we just standardized that. I think in the heyday of Scribe, they were doing a ton of books and they were growing really fast. Basically the simplest offering is you bring us a manuscript and we publish it for you. Like, that's what I hired Scribe to do as an author. And those are a lot of work, and they are our lowest price point. It's a $26,000 to do that for all the formats. And I think people were just like, this is too chaotic. There's too many customers buying this from us. We're going to raise the price. But like, it was an arbitrary price raise, and it's like, it made it inaccessible for a lot of people that just wanted to get their manuscript out there. So we lowered that price. That was one of the first things that we did. The guided author service, where if you want to write your manuscript yourself, but you don't want to be lost in the woods, facing the blank page on your own, we'll basically pair you with a private coach and editor who will guide you through the whole process, check in with you, help you structure and plan your writing as you go. That had been really shaped around a workshop, an in-person workshop in Austin that kicked off quarterly. And as a remote company kind of coming out of COVID, that didn't make a ton of sense. So we made that much more of a one-to-one synchronous service that anybody could start at any time. And then that, sort of leads into publishing. No changes to the professional, which is kind of our like flagship thing. We
What's
bundle
that? What
audio.
is the what is that
Scribe
service?
Professional. So this is for basically like this whole class of people who know they have expertise. They know that a book would benefit them. They either aren't necessarily a writer, don't want to write, or don't have time to sit down and spend 1,000 hours
Like
on
a CEO of a big company.
Yeah, CEO, executive consultant, lawyers, doctors, all kinds of people to choose this option. And this option is basically as high leverage as you can get. So we will pair you with a scribe who is not just a great writer, but also a great interviewer. And they will help you position and structure the book. They'll interview you, and then they'll turn your words, your stories, your ideas into a manuscript that reads as though you wrote it. And you've got a lot of control over how that goes.
I always thought this was a powerful, and I'll even call it innovation of Tucker's, which is to kind of almost formulaize the process of ghostwriting. So it doesn't have to be so ghost-like. It's not a mystery. It's just you need a good interviewer who has the basic skills of writing, and you could take someone's story into a book.
Yeah, and it's, he's got a really powerful talk about unlocking the world's wisdom. Books are incredible format, and people find it so intimidating to approach that, you need a good team and you need a good creative partner, and we can pull these stories and these ideas out of you and structure them in a book for you. With
do you think
really
AI
a
is
relatively
going
small amount of time.
Do you think AI is going to replace any aspect of this? And just to kind of put in front of that, I think AI won't replace the best writers out there. There's a lot of things about the human condition that, needs to be woven by a writer. And maybe I'm just being biased, but the human brain has more connections and synapses than the most complicated supercomputer. And I think that's where the writing comes from. But I do think basic good writing can be done by AI. So at what point do you get worried about AI, or do you never get worried about AI?
I'm not worried about it. I'm excited about it. Like, I think I am a futurist, accelerationist, techno utopian nut job, which is part of my job as a like an investor to be, but it's also just, I'm excited about the future. So I believe deeply, use the best tool for the job. Like you, I agree that the highest end of writers are probably always going to have finishing touches at minimum, maybe more, by a real human writer who deeply understands the craft. But I think I think AI will give a lot of leverage to the very best writers. And I think that's true of almost every domain. I think it'll raise the bar for the mediocre. I think it'll make the mediocre good, and the good great, and the great prolific. And I'm excited to see kind of how the process can change. And we're running experiments internally on some projects, and I'm using it, as an author, and have some fun experimenting with it. And
the other thing is, do you think people are? I mean, this is kind of an age-old question, but are people reading? I feel like I'm the most avid reader I know, and yet I feel like I've even declined in my reading because of so much, demand on my attention from everything else.
Yeah, I think books are competing for dopamine with some pretty superpowered things in the algorithms. But I think serious people read, and I think serious people will always read. I think books are an important Lindy format, and from a medium as the message perspective, there's no format more sacred, more prestigious, more high signal than a great, well-crafted book.
And this is why I always tell people also, it's for better or for worse, because there's a lot of criticism of this, it's a credential. If two people are going up for a job and one has the book written on the domain and the other one doesn't, then the person who wrote the book's getting the job.
Yeah. Or the customer, or the partnership, or the acquisition. I think this was originally a Tuckerism, but he's like, a college degree used to be a credential because 25% of the population had it. Now 75% of the population has it. Writing a great book is scary and hard, and it takes years of work, and it takes an investment, and you have to put yourself out there to be judged. But if you do that and you do something impressive, that is a credential. That is taking accountability. That's creating something that precedes you and establishes your reputation, establishes your authority, establishes your expertise. And I think that's a tremendous signal. And everybody, to some extent, is trying to build that trust and establish and signal that credibility at scale. And, how you can't possibly spend 10 hours of conversation one-on-one with every potential customer or partner or vendor that you have, but you can write a book that they read in their quiet moments and come to know you, come to understand your philosophy, your talent, your expertise, and your commitment to your craft.
And, at the same time, and look, I have a podcast, so I get pitched books. Probably, I'm gonna try to not exaggerate because it's very easy to exaggerate. But realistically, I probably get pitched 10 to 15 new books a day, not from just PR agencies and self-published authors, but from like and Jay can attest to this too, from every single publishing company, we get about 10 to 15 pitches a day. Okay, maybe that might be an exaggeration, but up to 10 a day at least. Some days more, some days less. And some of them are really good, and we'll say, hey, I can't wait to have this person on the podcast. But a lot of them, everybody just publishes the same business self-help, just junk. Like, I hate it. Like, 10 ways to be a leader. I built up a business to $1.3 million in revenue, and now I'm going to talk about it on a book. So have me on your podcast. Like, and it's all the same BS advice, which actually doesn't even work to begin with. So, it's not your fault. I'm not complaining to you. But like, I hope Scribe does more than just business self-help books. But that is the majority of books, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the thing that we always push authors to do is be really, really clear about who their reader is and what value they are delivering to them. Like, we don't care if your audience is 5 people or 5 million people, as long as you are like bringing your whole self, sharing everything that you know, and trying to do something unique through the context of your expertise and your unique, like the nicheness of some of these books would blow you away, but in their industry or in their particular like tiny little segment of the economy, they become a rock star and they become the person that wrote the book in one specific room. And that's all they need to unlock another level of their career.
And that's fine. The nicheness is fine. It's when everybody's like, the ABCs of leading and, go from 0 to 1 million in 20 lessons or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
that's like a mimetic duck race, right? That's just somebody trying to be Tony Robbins because they've always looked up to Tony Robbins,
Yeah. And look, Tony Robbins, his books are great. Like he kind of set the standard, and him and other guys who wrote about leadership way back, like John Maxwell or Zig Ziglar, I don't know, all those people. And I think people underestimate, I don't know if they do this anymore, but I think they did initially. They underestimate how great a writer Tucker Max is. Like he, and this reminds me also of like how people think about Hunter S. Thompson. So Hunter S. Thompson's like a classic example where people think, I'm going to take a lot of drugs, put myself in a wild situation like Las Vegas, and write about it. And that's not what Hunter S. Thompson does at all. Like, he spent 20 years crafting his skills before he did that. And same thing with Tucker too. Like, you can't just like go to a party, have a wild thing happen, and then write about it and be like Tucker Max. No, he is a writer first, and then he had these experiences. And by the way, people don't realize in his books how self-deprecating and how humiliating his stories are to himself. He's not bragging in those books. People think he's bragging. He's not. He's trashing himself in those stories and letting it bleed. And I think people don't realize that about like to be a good writer, you're fooling everyone that you're one thing, but you're really something else, which is a good writer.
Tucker is like, he is a savant, not just at writing. He is a great writer, but at truth telling. Like, I think this is what makes his stories great originally. I think that's what makes his memoir great. I think that's what makes even blog posts like this one that we're talking about great. He is unflinchingly truthful and deeply truthful, and he seeks that truth and he tells it like it is. And so few people are willing to do that as openly and as clearly as he is. That's what really makes him unique and his writing great.
So like at this point, do you feel you've righted the ship? Like, how are things going?
I think it's going well. I mean, the weird thing about being a CEO is that, you get your test results, 2 years after you take the test. So I'm not taking any victory laps yet, but given where we started, a year ago and where we are now, certainly culturally inside the team, I think we've done a really good job of just reestablishing this as a new day and a safe place and a place to just, calmly do good work after such a traumatic event that the team went through. I think publicly, we're getting better at telling the story, bringing people along, bringing the community back together. That'll be a long road to fully rebuild this trust and get Scribe back to, where it was in its greatest years of, 2019, 2020, 2021. But I deeply believe in this model, and I think we're seeing authors respond, and the people that are joining now in the books that we're about to be publishing in Q4 and Q1, I'm extremely proud of.
Like what?
And I don't want to share books publicly that the author hasn't shared that they're working with us. Okay. That's like a pretty like big no-no for us. So I'll have to like send you those separately or something.
Okay.
But yeah, you'll see some big names come out of us.
Let me know.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of Scribe authors on. Look, yeah. I've known Tucker and Scribe since before. I was invested in a precursor to all of this, and then that didn't work out. Tucker, in his graciousness, offered me the opportunity to roll the money over into Scribe or get my money back. No investment has ever made me that offer before, and I always had a rule: if I could get the money back in a bad situation, I would get it. And so I did that. But Tucker and I remained very close friends, obviously, and I always consider him a good friend. And and I would say the model of, or one of the books and processes that he used as a model for Scribe was when he helped me. I wanted to professionally self-publish my book, Choose Yourself, and the process that Tucker went through was almost became the process of what became Scribe. So because I really was serious about making it look as professional as possible.
I think that's a very important thing, and some authors underweight it. I want to ask for me and for all the authors that I work with at Scribe, and for all the authors listening. So you get 10 pitches a day for new books to come on the podcast?
Yeah.
How does somebody stand out? How does somebody craft a great pitch to you that makes you excited to talk to them or to share the book?
A good story. Like, it's no longer, I've gotten all the advice in the world. I've done 1,500 podcasts. I have gotten 70 different diets. I've gotten 70 different ways to build a business from scratch. I've talked to 100 different billionaires about the keys to their success. And of course, it's all survivorship bias, because there might be people who did the exact same thing they did who failed, but those people don't end up on podcasts. So I've gotten all the advice in the world. What I kill for is just great stories. And like, this is a good story. This is, Scribe was so central to kind of this new thing that was happening in publishing. And look, I think it's an unbelievable service that you guys offer. And then to have this guy, just go down in flames and bring Scribe with him, and then you bring it back from the dead, like this rise of the Phoenix. It's a great story. And I wanted to hear it personally. So it's an important story, not just for publishing, but just to see how to buy something that's dead, build it back up, create it again. And you're obviously in like inning 2, say, of this journey, but it's going to be an exciting one. Like, I mean, how do you feel? You were, like you said, you had an empty calendar every week. One thing was on your calendar. Now you're like, is your family upset that you're not around as much, or what's going on?
It is a change of pace, for sure. But I felt called to the story. I felt called to do what I could to resurrect this company and carry it forward. I think it is important for the publishing. I think it's important to show that a business with this model can work. It's like, I don't want Scribe to get taken down by one person and have traditional publishers then point at its failure for, claiming that this business couldn't work. Like, we can't have that. It's not good for 10 people in New York to decide what books get published. Like, by the way, I totally 100% agree with that. Yeah, very, very important. So I wanted to save this business, like, for my experience as an author, for the future of publishing. And now that I've gotten to know the team, like for the team. Like these are incredible people that are believing what they do, care deeply for authors, and just want a chance to, a context that they can thrive in. And now seeing authors, move from traditional publishing over to Scribe, now that they see us like on solid footing again, and excited to have the chance to own all their rights, own all their royalties, and have their creative freedom back. Like that's inspiring to me. Like I can't wait to see, where we get in a few years. And, hopefully we can complete the Cinderella tale and build this into quite a big company. I don't see any reason why this can't be one of the bigger publishing companies in the world. There's no natural limit on where we can go.
I agree. And I've always felt that way about the business model. I 100% agree with you. And look, let me know how I can ever help you guys out in any way at all. I'd be happy to just give advice every now and then if it's ever wanted for whatever reason. And again, I love the model, and congrats on doing what you're doing. And I hope everything succeeds.
Thank you so much, James. I mean, I appreciate that notion. I appreciate you having me on. You're helping just by, being interested in the story, and being willing to engage here. And, if you got another book in you, of course, we'd love to figure out how to get it out there.
I have many books in me.
I had a feeling that would be the answer.
I haven't, I did a book a year from 2003 to 2021. And then I've been sidetracked lately. It's again, a book a year. It's not even like on average. Like I did 25 books in those years and at least one every single calendar year. But I haven't done one since 2021. And, I need to do that. I need to get back into that. So we'll see.
We'd love to help. Happy to brainstorm and see what you got cooking. See if we can't pull one out of you.
Thanks once again, Eric, for telling the story.
You got it. Thank you, James. Appreciate the support.
At Capella University, learning the right skills could make a difference. That's why our business programs teach you relevant skills you can take from the course room to the workplace. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.